t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'avais manqué, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime. T'es ma préférée, Bruxelles, je t'aime, Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello and welcome to Bruxelles, je t'aime, Euronews' talk show all about the European capital of Brussels. On Brussels, my love, we break down some of the big stories of the week, examine what's at stake for you and for Europe. My name is Maeve McMahon. Thanks for joining us. Coming up this week, happy International Women's Day. It's almost that time of the year again when women are celebrated for a special UN day that came about back in the 70s. But now it's 2023, and although things are moving slowly in the right direction, women still have a lot of fights and very few wins here in Europe, with politicians rarely prioritising women's rights. And Brexit. Is it finally done? This week saw the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen take the Eurostar to London to stand by British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as he presented the so-called Windsor Framework. 7 years after the referendum that shocked many here in Brussels, we're asking how the EU feels now and if the UK and EU can make up and be friends again. To talk about these topics and much more, I'm joined here in our studio by Samira Rafaela, Dutch MEP from Renew Europe, Deirdre Clune, Irish Fine Gael MEP from the European People's Party, and Nela Kless, the Secretary-General of Eurocadre. Thank you so much for being with us here in our studio.
Thank you.
Before I hear from you and your insights, let's just take a look at how life in Europe for women in 2023 looks like. Christopher Pitchers has more.
The EU has a long and rich history of championing women's rights. The principle of equal pay for men and women has been enshrined in European law since the Treaty of Rome was signed in 1957. Since then, serious progress has been made. The Charter of Fundamental Rights, ratified at the start of the millennium, states that equality between both genders must be ensured in all areas. Even more recently, this year in fact, Spain became the first country to guarantee in law that women have the right to paid leave during their monthly periods. But despite all this progress, total equality is still not there. Women face a pay gap and discrimination in the workplace, and every day thousands of them throughout Europe and the world are subjected to some form of physical or sexual violence. And even with International Women's Day on next week's horizon, the road ahead on women's rights may have been significantly shortened, but there's still a long way to go yet.
Christopher Pitchers reporting there. And indeed, ladies, there is a long way to go, and I want to talk to you first about those challenges and the fights and ask you, why are these not right up on the top of the European agenda and discussed more, for example, at EU summits? Samira, we start with you.
Yes, well, luckily we see a lot of good developments when it comes to gender equality and fighting in favor of women's rights. I think that's definitely the direct consequence of having more female leadership and more female politicians, for example, in the European Parliament. There you see that representation is so extremely important, because if you don't have women sitting at that table, then certain questions will not be raised.
So
and
you're
this
positive.
is exactly...
You think there's more wins than fights?
I'm more positive, but I am so surprised and, of course, shocked sometimes by still the topics that we still need to discuss. Take, for example, this week, fighting sexual harassment in the European institutions.
There's a big debate about that, in fact, in the European Parliament.
Exactly.
Were you following that debate, Deirdre Clune?
No, but I wasn't following that bit. But I agree. I think there has been progress. Now, there's a way to go, but we had the Pay Transparency Directive just approved recently. I mean, that's really important to bridge that gap between what men are paid and what women are paid. Equal pay for equal work, a very important principle. So that's been approved. We have the Violence Against Women Directive that's currently being debated, started in the Parliament, come from the Commission. That's going to be important in tackling violence. A carer strategy. Important in recognising the value of caring in our communities, and that will help women as well. Advances in parental leave, paternity leave, they all help women ensure that they can stay in the workforce, keep their careers if that's what they want to do.
So things are moving.
Things are definitely moving. There is a carer strategy.
Nela, do you believe things are moving in this direction and a lot's being done lately because we have Ursula von der Leyen, a female perhaps, as the President of the European Commission?
I think it helps. We have seen some progress. Definitely we have seen some progress during the last years, but What is sure is that this is not quick enough, especially for all women, but especially for female workers. We can see today that the gender pay gap means that women earn 16% per hour less than men, and this has been improved by only 1% during the last 8 years.
Yeah, well,
So
we actually have some figures on that gender pay gap. We can take them up on your screen there, because in Europe, that earnings gap between men and women is highest in Estonia and Latvia, 22.3%. The European Union average, I believe, is at 13%, whereas over in France, it's 15.8%, Spain, 9.4%, and in Luxembourg, they are leading the way at 0.7%. They're stats that we found on Eurostat. So a long way to go there. And I feel like here at Euronews, we've been reporting on this story every year for the last couple of years, and we're always questioning ourselves, why is progress so slow?
Yeah. Well, this is exactly why hopefully in March we are going to vote on the new directive on pay transparency.
Yes, that you mentioned, Deirdre.
And I've been the head negotiator. I was responsible for this new directive on pay transparency together with Kira Peter Hansen.
And just remind our viewers what exactly it is.
Yes. So what we are very proud of is that we now manage to give the right to information to female workers, meaning that you can ask information and demand information on the average pay. So if you have the feeling as a female worker that your male colleague is being paid better while you're basically doing the same work, then you can challenge that. So you have that right to information, and there are binding measures included. Kira, Peter Hansen and we insisted on having binding measures because indeed it goes too slow, meaning that companies need to do the work now through binding measures, through new legislation.
Because those binding measures, how will they go down at member state level, and then how will they go down in companies?
There's a strong appetite, I think, for member state level, legislative level, to ensure that this happens. I mean, it's important. The principle of equal pay for equal work and the transparency directive is going to be important. Any company that's over 100 employees now will have to publish their gender.
And as of when could we see this?
Well, within 3 years is normally.
We first have the voting in March, of
End
course.
of March, right? Let's just hear the perspective from Eurocad.
Yes.
What's your take on this?
First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Samira, for this text. It's really an excellent text for us, and it will help reducing, I think, the pay gap. But once again, the problem is that we know how the processes are slow. We are very far from having the pay equality there, because it's like you have this discussions in Brussels that take ages, and then you have to transpose it in the member state. And we know that not all member states transpose it the way that it should be transposed. And then again, it has to be implemented in the companies. So we see how long is the process. We can't afford to take that long to get to.
But we can also not afford to do nothing. So I think, unfortunately, we are dealing indeed with legislative processes that often take long. But I do want to say that we managed to do it pretty quick. I mean, we thought that it could be something like women on boards, but we really managed to do it quickly. And now we have incorporated that there will be special equality and monitoring bodies that will make sure that companies comply to the rules. And if there is an average pay gap being observed in that company, starting from 5%, they need to start with correcting measures right away.
Because it's not just the gender pay gap; it's also the pension.
This is the
which
issue.
Is also
women
very
working,
concerning.
and if they're out at work if they have children, if they're out of work for a period or for times that they for caring, whatever, they usually, you find that's when it hits them. Then when they go to the pension, when they reach pension age, they haven't the number of contributions. So that's an issue as well, and that really does need to be addressed. But I think like the pay transparency, and then as I said, supporting with that is the issues like maternity leave, paternity leave. They're all really important. Recognising that women, if you take time off having children, well then when you go back to work, your job is there at the same place as it was previously, and that goes for men too. And that's important because that helps women in their careers as well to have if the partner, the father, the child as well can help in those situations. So everything, everything helps. Like minimum wage will set a standard as well. That's moving. And you're right. You mentioned, Samira, about the Women on Boards Directive, which is that was blocked. But it's come now under this.
It was blocked for many years.
For many years.
The former Chancellor of Germany was in power because she was against it. But then it was a big win for the president when
Ursula von der Leyen.
She made it a change of government.
Yeah, and you know, if you have, priority.
Yeah. She made it a priority.
Yeah.
She did from day one.
Yes, she did.
And if you have 30% boards,
your comments
it'll
on
filter
what
back.
you've heard so far, and perhaps on the Women on Boards Directive.
Yeah, so the Women on Boards, we were very surprised that it appeared suddenly after 10 years.
Now you know.
But we're very happy. But as I said, we're very far. We're in 2023. We're discussing things that should have been discussed like 10 or 20 years ago. Yeah. This is why, we are congratulating ourselves on this, but let's see how far we are from our age today. And then one thing that we also forgot is the unpaid care, and this is a problem. Today, again, in 2023, we have 81% of women who have on a daily basis unpaid care work. Yeah. While for men it's 48%. So
48%. And this was a major problem, obviously, during COVID, the lockdowns. We discussed that at length. But Deirdre Clune, earlier you mentioned the debate in the European Parliament this week. You mentioned sexual abuse as well, that's on the rise against women. I just wanted to show our viewers some figures as we've been digging to see what the situation is, and it's pretty serious. According to the figures we've been finding, 1 in 3 women in the EU has experienced physical and or sexual violence since the age of 15. And 75% of women in a professional job or in top management have experienced sexual harassment. And 1 in 10 women has experienced sexual harassment or stalking through new technologies. So online, so another new... Did you ever?
Yeah. The topic of sexual harassment is so extremely serious. I don't know any woman, to be honest, in my direct environment that cannot talk about sexual harassment, whether it's about a comment or sexual abuse. And
so you feel like 10 out of 10 women?
I definitely recognize these numbers, yes. And as being a female politician myself, what we go through online is absolutely it's unacceptable. The misogyny and the hate that we get as female politicians.
Absolutely unacceptable that you'd be targeted because you're a female politician, and that abuse online is a real issue now that we have to deal with it.
So
we
how
have
do
a lot
you
of
deal with it? What do you do?
Well, it's the Digital Service Act now is one of the legislations, pieces of legislation that have been approved, and that means what's illegal online. What's illegal offline should be illegal online. So that's one way of dealing with it, that you can't do it. And the companies have to be involved, the social media companies that are hosting this type of abuse, they have to be involved. And they are more. They've come on, certainly engaged more since COVID. They've been required to prepare a code of conduct to work with. The Commission has brought them in during that time to say this is unacceptable. It has to be removed, and there's no excuse that it's different cultures and different approaches. That doesn't work. You have to be clear.
Your perspective? You're the president of Eurocad.
Yeah, and well, in the first proposal of the Commission on the directive on combating violence against women, we didn't see the workplace there, and we were very surprised, while we can see that 1/3 of the sexual harassment take place at the workplace, and this was really a problem.
Why was it not there?
Well, we were happy that the Parliament managed to put it in there, but in the first version it wasn't there, so we were working on it and lobbying to make the workplace an important place to deal with the sexual harassment, especially. And this is a problem that when it comes to the workplaces, we're very far from having safe workplaces for workers, especially. Yeah.
And at least
we're very far from
on the
having safe
workplace.
workplaces.
Maybe one more point. At least we
briefly.
managed to have the topic on the agenda when it comes to our own European institutions and fighting sexual harassment. But
and there was a Me Too movement within.
There's a Me Too movement. Yes.
I'm just going to stop you there, because we'd like to move on.
Yeah.
And we would like to move on because we've talked about the fights, we've talked about the challenges, and now I'd like to talk as well about the wins. Because one story that stood out to us here on Euronews and that we covered extensively as well was that Spain became the first EU country to grant paid menstrual leave to women. The article says that the new laws will give the right to a 3-day menstrual leave to women if, of course, they have a doctor's certificate. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think there are many aspects to this. The first of all is that the problem is the non-recognition of important health issues or diseases like endometriosis, normally, as a disease. So the doctors today do not recognize this as a disease. The problem is that the women that have painful periods, they cannot be on sick leave just like any other worker who is sick. And this is a problem. And I think that I'm a bit afraid of what could be the consequences.
Why are you afraid it will cost you too much, this measure?
No, not at all. But I'm afraid of the consequences on women, because now women are a bit stigmatized at the workplace, while this should be something that respects the medical secret.
Okay, let's hear your view, Samir.
I do not agree, because when it comes to health issues related to menstrual health, this is a serious issue that I think is being so much ignored, even on an institutional level. And I can also speak for myself. When it comes to menstruation, when it comes to the pain that you experience as a woman, many women experience that, and they cannot function well in the workplace. It truly undermines their ambitions and growth in the workplace. And I think it's a really good step forward that Spain has introduced this.
Yeah. Very briefly, Deirdre, and then a reaction?
Well, I would think it is a good step. I hadn't heard it, but I think it's important, because for every woman, it's not the same. Period pain isn't period pain.
So you're hearing it first on
So some
Brussels,
people
my love.
do have very difficult situations, and I think.
And your brief reaction, because I want to show you something then.
Definitely, and this is the main problem. We have to consider that the reproductive health issues can be considered as any occupation health and safety issue, and this is a problem. So because there are other also health issues that are linked to reproductive health and that are not considered. If we can consider these issues, which is the basic that we ask for, as an occupation health and safety issue, just like any other health
I'm going to stop
issue,
you
then
there.
we resolve
We
the
need to
problem.
normalize it.
I'm going to stop you there, because, of course,
Definitely.
a lot of our viewers have never had a period in their life. They do not know what it's like to suffer once a month. And we wanted to get the medical, scientific opinion. So earlier this week, I spoke to Dr. Jeroen Maas. He's a Belgian GP, and he was very much in favour of the move. Take a listen.
If there is no conception, the uterus, which is basically a very, very, very big muscle, starts to contract to expel everything that's in there, to clean it up and to restart. When it contracts, it can be extremely painful, can cause cramps, sometimes even nausea, headaches, to an extent that some women experience it as very debilitating, and they cannot function during a couple of days. I can imagine it to be very difficult to work and to be productive in any way. As a GP, we see it on a very regular basis, women who come in and say, okay, this month has been very bad, and it's impossible for me to work because of the pain. So we definitely see that on a regular basis.
So Dr. Jeroen Maas, they're saying that he's already prescribing sick leave. But do you, Naila, think that this will discriminate against women, that men perhaps will get a job instead of a woman for reasons like this?
I don't know. It will depend how it will be accepted by this. I'm not saying that this is a wrong reform that they have in Spain. This is a step, but what I'm saying is that this is not enough.
Okay,
and the problem also that we're having, and that in many member states, almost all the member states, when you have a short sick leave, it's not covered by the social security.
Okay, this one would be though. Deirdre Clune, would you like to see this come into law in Ireland?
I think we should, yes, exactly. Well, if there's a medical doctor and a medical doctor certifies, I think that's the important provision in this.
And what about in the Netherlands?
I would like to see it throughout the EU, and this is exactly why I have requested a report with the name, with the title, Let's Talk About Our Body, and that's exactly about this, issues or health issues related to menstruation or hormones, because we need a European coordinated strategy to put this topic on the table. We deserve, as women, to be recognized when it comes to the health issues related to menstruation. Yeah,
but it's clearly not being discussed here at European level.
Well,
issue,
hopefully we're going to have
we
have a new health committee being established in the Parliament. So that's one where I think where issues like that and others can, because we've seen since COVID that Europe can do an awful lot when it comes to health, whereas health care is a matter for the member states. But in terms of public health and addressing health issues across Europe, we need a dedicated committee, which we're going to establish now in the Parliament. So
okay,
one
so
avenue for that.
Final comment with yourself?
Well, I think this is a first step, but I think we have to consider all the health issues that are linked to women, and avoid this stigmatization, but make it general also for men. There are also some reproductive health issues that should be considered.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because we do not have any more time, but thank you so much for your insights. And you don't go anywhere, because after the break, we'll be hearing how the EU and the UK seem to be friends again. See you soon on Euronews and Euronews.com. Welcome back to Brussels, my love, where we're taking a look back at some of the European stories that hit the headlines this week. Well, a big talking point in this town was the Brexit breakthrough on post-Brexit trade rules. The new kid on the block, the Windsor Framework, which wants most goods going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland to no longer need customs checks. Before we hear the views from our panel, let's find out exactly what's new in this deal. Here's Jill Rutter from the UK in A Changing Europe.
The particular sort of innovation in this deal is the introduction of what they're calling the Stormont break. So in the old protocol, if there was a entirely new EU law, it would only be imposed in Northern Ireland by agreement between the UK and the EU in the Joint Committee. Now, if the EU is proposing to change EU laws that already apply in Northern Ireland, there'll be a process of consultation, but also the possibility that members of the Northern Ireland Assembly could object to that law being applied in Northern Ireland, and that could give the UK government the ability to veto those changes application in Northern Ireland.
Jill Rutter there speaking to our Paul Lachok up and oh. So I'd like to start with our politicians around the table from Ireland and from the Netherlands to hear your take on that, as I'm sure, Deirdre Clune, you were following that very carefully.
Very carefully, and have been for a number of years now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a relief now. It hasn't been accepted or agreed yet.
Of course.
The UK side, and we hope that'll happen. But I think, from my point of view, what was important is the provisions of the Good Friday Agreement, and that there would be no border on the island of Ireland. That was extremely important. That is still there. And the single market, I mean, lots of people are here in Brussels are asking about that. Will our single market be protected? Which it will do. So there's no change in that. It means this has come about from consultation with people on the ground, businesses and consumers, the difficulties they had. There was at one point there wasn't food on the shelves in Northern Ireland, and that wasn't. That nobody wanted that to happen. Nobody wanted people to be disadvantaged or to feel that this was a bad situation for them. But now we have this trusted trader development, whereby if you're just supplying food to the shelves or any product from the UK into Northern Ireland, then you establish yourself as a trusted trader.
That's all people care about.
That's all they care. They just want life to go on.
They want to get on with their lives.
They want to get on with their lives, exactly. And they just and they want their assembly reinstated as well, I'm sure. Exactly. But that's what they want. And this is what's been done within the framework of the protocol. It's flexibilities, it's pragmatic, people sitting around the table saying, look, we voted for Brexit, we want it to happen now. Of course it has to happen. Yeah. But and how can it happen? And for Northern Ireland, it means now that they have the best of both worlds. They're in the single
all
market.
eyes now on Northern Ireland to see
and they're in
how they
UK
digest.
as well. They can trade with the UK. So for businesses are really happy there. I've heard a couple of business leaders out in the last number of days who say, this is a great deal for us. Okay. This is what we want.
So Deirdre Clune there breathing a sigh of relief. What about you, Samira? What's your take?
Well, I mean, I'm absolutely relieved too, taking into account the context of Brexit, where so many people did not want to have Brexit. Take, for example, also the young generation growing up. And if they would have voted back then, if they were allowed to, we might have a different outcome here. So I'm just very glad that we are out of the, scenario of escalation. It is good for both worlds that we continue as friends in the world, that we continue as strong strategic economic allies, because at the end this is about the companies. At the end this is also about the safety of our consumers and citizens, and we need order and peace. So
it looks like the friendship is back. I mean, if you take a look at the photos, for example,
well, the friendship was always there.
Well, there was no trust, and you can't be friends with someone if you cannot trust.
Yes, but from the historical perspective, I find it very important.
But in the room,
that.
in the reality, what was happening for the last couple of years.
And in light of the war in Ukraine and climate change and rising inflation, energy prices.
It's easy to talk about what you get on,
rather than.
But let's hear your perspective. How has Brexit impacted you as the head of Eurocadre?
So what I can say is that Brexit definitely did not help workers in the UK whose rights were eroded completely, with the right to strike was threatened. And by the way, I take this opportunity to express my solidarity to the Prospect Union, who were fighting for their rights and for the right to strike. But what I think is mainly that before 2016, what we missed is that we did not promote enough the benefit of being EU membership. We have seen in The Guardian this week, I think, they reported on the food poverty for children that has almost doubled last year in the UK. So, yeah, these are the people that are paying for the Brexit today.
You know, I will always hope for the UK one day to come back to the European Union. I will always hope for that. I mean, I
miss them.
Yeah,
I miss them absolutely.
But Ireland has been grieving for years. Has it not just accepted the fact now that the UK is?
We've accepted. I mean, we joined the European Union. We're really tied to the UK in terms of our common travel area, and you know, we were tied with the currency. We moved away from that. There are a lot of ties there. So we've tried to manage this as best we can. But I mean, our place as members of the European Union, and I don't think there's no question of Ireland ever.
And the big news,
leaving.
big news for Ireland could be if the President Joe Biden, the US President, comes over on the 10th of April.
To
mark the 25th anniversary.
The 25th, and the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And I think it's important. An important statement around that is the people of the island, on the island of Ireland, both north and south, we actually voted in a referendum for that Good Friday Agreement. So I think it's stronger than any agreement between governments or between institutions. It's of the people, it's by the people. So it's important, really, really important that that's protected.
And what have been the positives of Brexit for the Netherlands, for example?
Well, I would not go that road. I mean, I think that we could see definitely economic implications when it comes, for example, the administrative burden, but also when it comes, for example, the investment climate for companies. So I would not say that the Brexit in general has benefits. The whole challenge now is to make sure that we make the best out of it. I think this is, again, a good step forward. But I've always said about the Brexit that it's a strategic, political, economic mistake, and I still share that
all agree
opinion.
With you on that, but it's a decision of the people.
But we now need to make.
I mean, it's done.
And indeed,
it's almost done.
Indeed, and we need to respect the outcome. Indeed, because we are democrats and we need to respect that. But I do think I agree with you that we need to make sure that we keep informing citizens about the benefit and the value of being part of the European Union.
That was one of the lessons from Brexit. Yes. I mean, we need to keep communicating the benefits of it, not just and it's not just all. I mean, there's rights, but there's responsibilities also.
Yes.
And
so
Naila,
I
has
think
the
it's
EU
an education
on PR and comms since Brexit?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We're a bit far from the citizens. This is the problem. We are in our bubble here in Brussels and trying to connect to the citizens. This is a challenge.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you so much, ladies, for your insights, and thank you so much for watching us here. See you soon on Euronews and Euronews.com. Welcome back to Brussels, my love, with me, Maeve McMahon, where we're taking a look back at some of the headlines of the week. And one rather glamorous item that caught our eye was Paris Fashion Week. Let's take a look at what was trending on the catwalk. Ladies, anything you like there? Would you wear anything?
Well, I think it's a bit ironic to overlap the Paris Fashion Week with the International Women's Day, especially knowing that 80% of the workers in the industry of textile are women, mainly from the third countries.
So you're not a fan. What about yourself?
I mean, I love to look at fashion. It really doesn't. It's the colour. Colour would attract me. It seems to be a lot of darker colours there. But yeah, I mean, I think fashion is changing. Consumers and consumers' demands are changing. Briefly?
I love fashion and I love Paris, but the textile industry, when it comes to the fashion industry, needs to really transform into slow fashion, meaning fair and trade
That's
fashion.
exactly why we wanted to show you those
Yeah.
pictures, because the textile sector, which includes clothes, has the 4th highest impact on the environment and climate change after food, housing and transport. And that's not to mention what you already alluded to. So how can these fashion weeks be sustainable? Can fashionable clothes ever be sustainable and ethical?
Yes.
Oh, I think they can.
Yeah?
Yeah, they can absolutely be, and I think there's a strong consumer demand for it. And I mean, you can see some companies are responding to that. But issues like wastewater, 20% of wastewater in the world comes from is from dyes from clothes. You know, so that's not sustainable.
And what about you personally? I mean, you're in the public eye,
Yeah.
so you need to dress
Yeah.
to be in the public eye.
Yeah.
But do you think of the planet when you're shopping?
Yes, I look more and more at labels when I buy clothes. I find it very important because it starts with the consumers. When there's a strong movement among consumers, then the companies need to come along with it. This is exactly why I'm very happy with my report that we have voted on yesterday on corporate sustainability and due diligence for companies.
And I had another one this morning.
Yeah,
so
and we included the textile industry for this reason.
That's the report that Didier Reinders, the Justice Commissioner,
Exactly.
is working on.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think that we have to make the companies accountable, not only the citizens, and this is a problem. But unfortunately, Deirdre, I have to say that your political party has to be stronger on this issue, because we know that in March 2022, you wrote to the Commission saying that we have to postpone the due diligence because of the war in Ukraine, while we know that the multinational did not reduce their efforts on funding Russians' war during
Deirdre,
this
would you like to answer to
Well,
that?
I
Your
think
political party do not like that due diligence.
Well, we do. We were using it today, and we voted on a report on it. But I mean, I think due diligence is important. We've given that opinion previously, and companies are looking for it now. We need to look at the impact on the environment, on labour, that we're paying fair wages, and the companies are doing that. And I think there is a strong move towards accepting.
I mean, it was very important, very important to have also, the centre-right groups coming along with it, but unfortunately they didn't. And I hope that in the future they will participate in a constructive debate here, because this is also about human rights, it's about labour rights, it's even about gender equality. This is why I made my report also gender responsive, and this is why I wanted to include the textile industry, because so many women and girls are a victim of unfair practices. So this is just, this is a joint responsibility, and I just hope that we can have more and more constructive debates on how we are going to hold companies.
I think you're seeing that across all the various committees in the Parliament now, and when we get to plenary debate, I think you'll see strong engagement.
Just to inform our viewers, at the moment we understand Copenhagen Fashion Week is leading the way. They've banned fur, for example. No burning of previous stock is allowed, and brands must sell items to discount outlets like TK Maxx. There you go. But that is, I'm afraid, all we have time for. Thank you so much for all your insights, and thank you for watching. We'll see you soon here on Euronews and Euronews.com.